This video is for Lab 5 and it's to show us how to use multiple classes and also an introduction to Eclipse. So within Eclipse, the first thing we do is create a new Java project. We get this dialog up here and we call the project whatever we want to. So in this case, we'll call it Lab 5. So if we expand our project here, we see there's a directory called src, which means source, where our source code goes. So that's our classes that we write. So if we right click on that, go to new and class, and here we type in the name of the first class we want to create, which is main program. Okay, so the only other thing we need to worry about here is just make sure that that's public, that all of these checkboxes are turned off. So that creates the bones of the class for us there. So we'd also create our second class here. So right clicking again on default package there and doing new class, and this time it's going to be called country operations. All the same settings as before. Okay, so again we just get an empty class, and you can see here that we have the two classes in two separate tabs. So we start as usual in our main class with a main method. So let's set up what we need here for the moment. The first thing being our array of country names. So let's put that in there. The next two variables which we need to declare at the start of our main method are an int to store the user's response when they are entering menu options. So we'll default that to 0 as we usually do with ints. And the next one is also to capture a user's response when they choose option 2 in the menu, when they want to find out how many countries begin with a particular letter sequence. The next thing we need is our scanner, as usual. And import java.util.scanner at the top as usual. Okay, so that's all the variables we need for the moment. So we're going to stop there in the main program and we're going to switch over to country operations. So here, as defined in the lab sheet, the first method which we need looks like this. So it takes a parameter, which is the string array of country names. So that's coming into it. It's called calculate average country length, and it will return an int, which is the answer it will calculate for the average country length. Okay, so that's showing an error there because we haven't completed the return type yet. It's expecting an int to be returned out of this method. So here, this is just a regular average calculation. So as with all our average calculations so far, we declare a variable called running total, started at 0. The next thing will be to have a for loop which will go up through the entire country names array, as usual, starting at position 0 and going to position length -1. Okay, so that's our usual for loop for traversing through a full array. So I, as usual, pointing us at each array location as we go. So what we want to do here is, at each position there is a country name, so we want to take the length of that country name at that position and add that onto the running total. So for example, if the first country is Afghanistan, we take the length of that. The next country is Albania, we take the length of that. We add up the lengths of every single country. We're adding those onto running total all the time. So it's running total equals running total, that's already in there, plus the length of the country name which we are currently looking at, that's pointed at by I. So it's country names I, and then we call that length. So this is the length method of string. Remember, country names I is going to point to a string. There's a string in each slot of the array. So when we come out of this for loop, we'll have a large number which will be the total length of all the countries added together. So then we finish off our average calculation by returning the result of running total divided by, so it will be the number of countries, which is country names dot length, the length of the array. The next method, which is defined in the lab sheet, is this one. So it's called get number of countries beginning with letter. It takes the letter sequence which is being searched for, and again it takes the entire country names array. So it takes two parameters. So once again here, we can copy and paste the code from here. We are cycling up through the entire array, or traversing the whole array. And what we want to do at each point is check if the country we are currently looking at if it starts with, so we use the starts with method of string. So if it starts with the letter sequence that has been provided into this method. If it does, we want to count that as a country which begins with that letter sequence. So we're going to have some way of counting the number of countries as we go, the number of countries which begin with this letter sequence. So let's declare a variable up above the for loop here, call it counter, and start it at 0. So every time we find one of these countries which starts with the letter sequence, we'll add 1 onto counter by doing counter plus plus. So once we come out of the for loop down here, we will have counted all the countries that we need to, all the ones that begin with that letter sequence. So whatever value is in counter will be the number of countries beginning with that letter, and it's the answer to what this method is calculating. So we simply return counter. The final method is a simpler one. There's no calculation involved here, and there's no parameters being passed in. There is no return type, so its job is just to print a menu. So all we need to do here is print out 4 lines. Please choose an option, and then 1, 2, 3 with what each option allows the user to do. Okay, so that's country operations complete with our 3 methods. So we can now return back to main program and see how we make use of this country operations class. So as mentioned in the lecture, the first thing that we need to do to be able to use the methods of a regular class is to create an instance of that class. So we do that as follows. So what we're doing here is declaring a variable called country ops instance, or whatever you wish to call it, of type country operations, and we are creating a new one of those in memory. Okay, so similar to arrays, we can't just declare the variable. You have to declare it and then ask for a slot in memory, in this case for the class. That's not necessary with primitive types and strings, as we see here. So the first thing which we want to do is ask the user to enter an option. So to do that, we can just use the print menu method of country operations. So to do that, we do country ops instance dot, and we see there's a print menu method there, picks it up automatically. So that will print out this menu here from the other class, those 4 system out println statements. So that's going to prompt the user. So after printing the menu, we would expect the user to type 1, 2, or 3. But whatever they type, we want to capture that into the user's response variable using the scanner. So it would be keyboard dot next int. So it's going to capture the option with which the user types. Okay, so we now need to decide what our condition of our while loop is going to be. So if you look at the sample output in the lab sheet, we want to keep presenting this menu time after time after time, as long as the user doesn't press 3. So they can enter anything else. If they enter 1, they'll be brought into option 1, which is calculate the average country length. If they enter 2, they'll be asked to enter a letter sequence, and it will find how many countries begin with that letter sequence. If they enter 3, they exit. Obviously we don't enter this while loop. If they enter any other number, we still want to enter this while loop and tell them that they've entered an invalid response, and it'll come back again and enter or display the menu to them again. So give them another chance. So the only reason we wouldn't want to come in here is if the user response was 3. So while the user's response is not equal to 3, we'll come in here. Okay, so there are 3 possible cases once we come in here. Either they enter, if they've not entered 3, they'll have either entered 1, 2, or something else. So let's write the if then else statement for that. If user's response equals 1, and we'll do something there in a moment. Else if user's response equals 2, we'll do option 2 there in a moment. So if they've come in here, it's not 3. If it's 1, we do this. If it's 2, we do this. Otherwise, anything else is going to be an invalid option. So we print out, you've entered an invalid option. Okay. So let's go up here to user's response 1. So this is where we want to calculate the average country name length. So we have a method in country operations to do that, called calculate average country length. So we want to call that method and pass it the array of country names up here. So to call a method in the country operations class, we give the name of the instance, the variable name of the instance which is created above, then do dot to call a method. Same way we would do dot length for a string. So we do calculate average country length, and we want to pass country names up here. And that's pre-filled in for us there. Eclipse has guessed that. So that's fine, that calls the method. It sends this array over to it. And if we look at this method, we know that this will return an int, it will return the result. So let's store that result when it comes back. Store it in this int variable. And then print out the result. So the average country name length is, and we concatenate on the result. So that's the first part done. The next part, option 2, is where we ask them for a letter sequence, and we will then check how many countries in the array begin with that letter sequence. So the first thing we do here is quite straightforward. We prompt them to enter the letter sequence, and then we use the scanner to read that into the letter sequence variable which we declared up above. Once again, here we're going to use a method of country operations. So we have our second method in here, get number of countries beginning with letter, which takes a letter sequence and takes the array of country names. So let's pass the two of those to that method. So country ops instance dot get number of countries beginning with letter. So the first argument, as it's called, is whatever the user typed in and got stored in this variable here. So that's letter sequence or letter seek. And the second is country names. So we pass the two of those things over. And similar to our previous method here for calculating the average country length, this method also returns an int. You can actually see that if you hover over here, and it'll give you the return type there at the start. So again, we'll store that in an int. So let's call that result 2. So we now want to print out the result. So the number countries beginning with, and we concatenate in the letter sequence in the middle. So letter SEQ. Then finish off our string. So this would be something like the number of countries beginning with, for example, A is, and our result is here in result 2. So that almost completes the while loop. So these are the three possible things that can happen: option 1, option 2, or an invalid option. Regardless of which one of those happens, once they are finished with whatever happens as a response to their entering a number, we then want to prompt them again so that they have another go. So we simply print the menu again and capture their response. So it's actually the same 2 lines as here. So they'll be prompted with the menu again, they'll enter a value here, and the loop then goes back up to the top, and we'll check that response, and it all starts all over again. Unless, of course, or until they enter 3, at which point the while loop will finish, and at that point our program is over, so we can just print goodbye. So finally, to run our program, we come back over here to our main program, which is the one with the main method. Right click, do run as Java application. So this console window down here is the equivalent of our command window when we were running from the command line. So we get our menu displayed up here. So if we enter 1, it prints out the average country length, name length is 8, and it presents us with the menu then again. So 2, it would prompt us for a letter sequence. So let's say BA, it says the number of countries beginning with BA is 3. Again, the menu is thrown up to us. So let's try entering an invalid option, so 5 for example. So you've entered an invalid option. It presents the menu again. So we've gone through all 3 cases there inside the while loop. So finally, if we enter 3, the while loop finishes and our program finishes.